Hello everyone, welcome back to the course on Health Humanities, Indian and Western Medical Knowledge Traditions. This is lecture number 47 on Nature and Medicine in Chinua Achebe. Though this is in the post-colonial context and African context, however, the purpose is to bring how the post-colonial or African medicine are also to some extent similar to Indian medical traditions, particularly in the context of nature and planetary health. So this lecture is about how the health of planet, how the health of nature, and what is the role of nature in the health of human beings. So here we find a connection between Indian medical practices and African medical practices. So the purpose is to broaden the Indian medical practices in different contexts. In this lecture, I will talk about planetary medical humanities, and then I'll talk about the notion of nature and medicine in Chinua Achebe, particularly in his two novels, Things Fall Apart and The Arrow of God, where I'll talk about the intersection of health, environment, and healing. So, how health and environment are interconnected, how they heal the illness and disease of the people who are suffering. When we think about planetary health, one has to think about the relation between human health, environment, and traditional African medicine. And so we find that the relation between them is a very much interconnected, and they are also seen sometimes the intervention of divine, the intervention of the health healing by nature. So the health of human beings are healed by nature as well as divine practices. Further, we have environment and human health which intersect. We find that they share that environment and human health share the precarity of human and non-human life, because the way human life is facing precarity, similar way nature is also facing a precarity. The intersection between ecocriticism and medical humanities are also crucial, because we find that ecocriticism, the health of nature, are to some extent similar to the health of human beings. One has to consider that human beings and nature coexist. They cannot exist separately. There are different countries where people have the practices of nature health, nature bath. The people can get mental peace by traveling in the forest, by walking in the forest and gardens. And the health of nature is the health of human beings. So the literary understanding of human body and minds have a great connection with the physical environment, and it can be justified through the novels which I'll be discussing a little later. Further, I will talk about how post-colonial construction of health and illness are having connections with nature and human life and human existence. When we think about the planetary health and planetary medical humanities, we find that the health of human being and the health of environment are synonymous. Planetary medical humanities do not differentiate between human health and environment health. It doesn't differentiate between the health of human and non-human. It considers the health of animal, nature, birds, and all beings of this earth is equally important as human health. The intersection of medical humanities and environmental studies has resulted into green medical humanities, eco-criticism, planetary medical humanities, planetary health, and many other disciplines. So when we think about planetary health, it talks about the physical, mental, and social as well as ecological well-being of human beings. What is like ecological well-being of human beings? What is physical and physical health of planet? These two needs the elaboration of how human health is interconnected with ecological health. Ecological health is that how the nature participates in healing human health, as well as ecological health is also about how nature is protected and how nature is treating human beings in terms of the improvement of their health. So planetary medicine is about taking care of not just the environment and nature, but also about human health. It talks about the alliance of health between nature and human beings. It talks about the alliance of living and non-living, human and non-human beings' health. And hence we find that planetary medical humanities and planetary health are about the health of human beings as well as the health of nature. When we think about the portrayal of nature and medicine in Chinua Achebe, there are a number of concepts which come to our mind, that how they are important. When we think about Chinua Achebe, particularly his novel Things Fall Apart and other novels, we find that Achebe is very much preoccupied with nature, and his characters are part of the nature, part of the earth, part of forest, part of different mythical practices. And in the indigenous Igbo society, medical and environmental culture are interconnected. It reveals that the traditional African medicine and environment are interrelated. They share a deep bond between them. For example, when we think about the different rituals, cultural practices, the concept of healing and medicine in Chinua Achebe, they are associated with different practices of nature, different cultures and practices in the nature. For example, when we think about the Igbo concept of medicine, and Igbo concept of medicine is basically based upon the herbal medicines, or the medicines derived from nature. When we think about the novel Things Fall Apart, we find that in this novel, a disease has been seen as an abomination to the earth goddess, and it has been considered as something which is challenging the authority of the oracles of the hills and caves. Because the oracles of the hills and caves, the earth goddess, have their own way of curing. And so the people who have any kind of disease, they worship earth goddess, they go to the oracle of the hills and caves for their cure and treatment. And if further, the people who are having disease, then they go to the place called evil forest, and the evil forest will treat their physical maladies. It will treat their mental maladies. When we think about the family of Okonko, who is fighting against a disease called Iba, and then we find that the only mode of treatment is through medical practices. Once Ikwepi has health concerns, and a medicine man comes and provides her herbal medicines, provides her medicine from nature. Further, there's another concept of medical practice in the Things Fall Apart. It's called the Agbanji phenomenon. Agbanji phenomenon is that when a child is born and it has some kind of health concerns, then the child will be thrown to a place called Agbanje and it will treat the person. In the novel The Arrow of God, we find the representation of illness, nature, and medicine. They depict, the novel depicts the relation between divine, human, and animal. It talks about a different kind of medical practice which is called in the novel Dibya. Dibya is something which we also find in the Indian context. It refers to herbalists. It refers to the medicine man in the novel The Arrow of God. It talks about how the African people practice herbal medical system, and this medicine, which is called Ogu, it is about protecting not just the individual but protecting the entire clan, and hence it has they worship a deity called Ulu, and this worship is about how they heal through environment, and also they heal the environment. Further, the novel talks about sin ailment, that if somebody has committed any sin, it will lead to suffering, and this suffering can be cured through different environmental gods and goddesses. The novel also talks about the medical practices which are based upon wood and fire. So to conclude, when we think about planetary health in the South African context, we find that it bridges the literature, health, and ecological consciousness. It talks about how novels can provide rich material to understand the medical practices in a very local and alternative context, and at the same time it challenges the dominant Western medical practices. So by bringing again the post-colonial novels in Indian and Western medical knowledge traditions is about how the Western medical practices and how environmental health can critique the Western medical traditions and how they are similar to Indian medical traditions. Thank you.